Yeah, and also I was kind of wondering, we mentioned this before, how there's a lot of bits, especially like the twisted ones, etc., that can cause, they're more prone to pinching the horse's mouth. And, there's a lot of bits that have different technologies, and some people wonder like, oh, how do I know whether this bit is going to pinch my horse's mouth, etc. So I kind of wanted to get into that topic a little bit. I feel like it's a little, it's interesting. And I feel like a lot of people could benefit from hearing, how do you know when a bit is pinching your horse's mouth?
I love that question. Don't you think that's very valid question?
I mean, we've talked about like how to fit the bit and like how big it should be and how long it should be. But as far as like, when to recognize there are combinations between cheek and mouth where you're going to have more possibility to pinch is definitely a fabulous question.
I love that. So thank you for asking that. Now, I want to start that question off with, do you know a horse's two instincts? They have two.
You tell me.
Fight or flight. Now, when a horse is uncomfortable, it does one of two things. It runs away because that's its instinct. It keeps going forward, or it stops. You see a lot of horses, they're like freight trains, and the rider's like, so strong, it's so this, it's so that, but really it's not. You see, it's using one of its two natural instincts when it's in pain or uncomfortable. It's running. It's running from what hurts. It's running from what it doesn't like. So those are primary and secondary evasions, are what they called. If you take a horse and you put it in a round pen, okay? And I used to do a lot of this when I was with Ian Miller all the time. 10, 15 horses a day. That is what I did. I was the round pen guy. And so, if you take a horse that's very strong and very powerful, and it uses flight when you're riding it, if you put it in the round pen, it's very interesting to see that they actually switch evasions. So what does that tell you? You can't make a hot, fast horse go forward. Now that's an interesting concept, isn't it? Why would a horse, when you're sitting on it, run? And so, what's interesting about that is, so we couldn't make a forward-going horse go forward in the round pen. This wonderful horse didn't know to run, and it didn't know to stop with a rider. We've taught them to do that through our negative and positive reinforcement, depending how you train, right? Horses learn both ways, and we teach them to do good and bad things. We teach them. They don't know until we teach them that. When we talk about pinching and discomfort and how do we know, I think you have to use a little bit of intuition if we're not talking about the obvious cues, right? If you turn your hot horse out in a paddock and it doesn't go for a bolt, well, that's probably a good indication. Maybe there's something when I'm riding this horse that's irritating it, because any good, happy horse normally is going to go buck play in the field, but you have to know your horse. If it does that by instinct, okay, that's not what I'm talking about. But if they're a runner in the paddock, you have to kind of look at a lot of different things about your horse while you're off of it, right? Does it drag me when I'm walking it? Well, if it drags you when you're walking and it drags you when you ride it, well, those are similarities. There's similarities to horses when on and off the ground, okay? Very similar. Or does it drag behind me and not go? So you have to kind of look at, people don't look at the whole picture. They're always like, it's strong, it's this, it doesn't go forward. And I'm thinking to myself, well, did you look at everything else around you? Like, how does it behave? The problem is most people in this sport, they have grooms. They don't know what their horse does or doesn't do on the ground. This is a problem. This is a fundamental flaw. So I know we're talking about how do you know if a bit pinches or this or that? Well, you should probably start with, do you know your horse when you're off? Do you know what it does in the box? Do you know?
Yeah, the basics. And sorry if I interrupt you, because we're on this topic right now, like the whole grooms thing, especially in Mexico. We are here in this country, people are only used to having grooms. There's basically nobody that does their own grooming or takes care of their own horses. It's a cultural thing. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong, because there's a lot of people that are invested in their whole horses and do take care of them and are very careful with what the grooms are doing. So there's a lot of people that aren't, but it's more of a cultural thing, Here in Mexico, it's basically 90% of the riders are amateurs. So, hard workers, people who are entrepreneurs, or, just people that have jobs, families, etc. So they don't really have the time to be with their horses. I personally had the pleasure to be in Europe riding for some time. While I was in the US, I was basically doing my own grooming. So I have the time to see all of that. Here in Mexico, I do have a groom that takes care of my horses. I'm here on vacation, they're over there, and it works. But I do get involved in the whole, what's going on with the horse. But I feel like you making that point is very important.
Now, I want to clarify there's nothing wrong with having a groom. I also had grooms. I had wonderful people that worked for me privately for a long time when I had horses. But I'll tell you what, I had the full report. If you come up with an excuse as to why you are failing, you should look in the mirror, because the answer is you. 99.999% of the time. For the twisted and non-twisted, obviously, the obvious answer is this. If it pinches, you would see sort of the flesh on the gums or the cheek would be discolored. Probably you would see, of course, an opening, a wound. You would see signs of distress in the horse's eye. They might do like this because they're trying to get away from the bit. They would, maybe kind of shake their head like that. There's a few indications that could give you a clue as to how that bit feels for that horse. That's the simple answer. But the lead up to that answer had to happen.
So there's some horses that, tend to have a little bit of an unstable contact. What do you recommend for us to use with horses that have a little bit of an unstable contact and that you need them to grab onto the bit a little bit more and for them to have a steadier?
So that is a partially complicated question, because it really has to do with the rider and the horse itself. Because there's a horse that you could say you want it to take the bit, but you want it to have its head up. You know what I mean? Because it's too low. You can have a horse that grabs the bit and it's doesn't get raised up or too low. So that's a really general question, and so I'll answer really, really in general.
General. Let's suppose that the rider is doing has the enough amount of impulsion, so the horse is definitely dragging from the back end forward, and we are technically saying that things are being done correctly, but the horse is still a little bit unstable. You know what I mean?
Unstable, I interpret as he's on and off, and that's what you're trying to ask me. And so for a horse that's on and off the contact, like here and here and here and here, I really hate a Waterford, because a Waterford is typically when they're fixing on the bit, right? And it gives them nothing to lean on because it has so many joints they can't fix on that bit. If he's leaning into the bridle and he's too heavy, it kind of breaks up his ability to fix on it and get stronger because there's nothing to grab onto. So let's be clear, a Waterford is not your answer in that solution.
That it's great, because there's a lot of people that think that is the solution for that certain problem. I mean, I've seen it around here in Mexico a lot. I have seen people use them that way. So that's why I wanted to clarify that, because I had a horse that had 1,000 pounds in his mouth and I used the Waterford to take that away from him. But in the case of horses that are a little too unstable, I usually tend to use rubber flexible things so that they have a little bit more to grab. I think that works. Does that help a little bit or not? What do you recommend?
I will try my best to make this as general as possible. When we talk about a horse that's on and off the contact, we also have to look at other elements going on, like the bridle. Because, for example, there was a client that had a horse with not an abscess, but a growth on the side of its head. And they're like, well, why is it on and off? You have to look at, how does the bridle sit on the pole? Is it causing them a headache? Right? Are there other things contributing? Now, using a bit for this on and off topic, I use a noseband a lot of the times for this on and off topic. Typically, I will start from zero. I will give the horse, the most basic of all things, like you said, a flexible bit. Something in silicone is fine as well, whatever. And you can use different types of nosebands and play around with it.
It seems like we default back to the acceptance of the bit in that scenario, where the horse is inconsistent in the bridle and he's not taking your hand. He's not, accepting the contact, with the head flipping or the hopping up and down on and off the contact. So I see a lot in free horses. Yeah.
There's a you will aspect that has to be involved in horse training.
There's also an issue of compassion here, though, as well. We have to be compassionate as riders and understand, there's a fitness level as well. The horse can't carry itself, from the day you start riding. You can't ask it to frame up and cram it in a frame and make it stay there and expect it to be able to hold contact, because it can't. Yeah. It's got to develop the musculature through the top line. It's got to be fit. It has to be, able to carry itself and connect the frame instead of, being young and green and unfit and then, becoming uncomfortable while trying to hold a frame longer than maybe it should.
I think realistic expectations, all of that was in the context of realistic expectations. What I'm saying is you, A, have to have realistic expectations. B, B, make sure there's no underlying issues. And then C, do a proper training program. And after that, you can say
you can
will,
expect.
because there's
Exactly.
Right.
You can have expectations.
I'm saying make sure you do your homework, check the dentist, the this and that, and then after that, evaluate if training is the issue. If training is the issue, then you must say you will.
Yeah, because as well as Michelle said, like, yeah, you have different expectations depending on the horse's age, horse's training, horse's fitness level. Like, there's a lot of factors that play within this, but like you said, we are all generalizing and being very general on the whole topic, but like, there's obviously horses that do need a little more boundaries than others. Like, my traumatized gelding, I won't be able to put any boundaries because it's just going to make me go 10 steps backwards. But then if I have a horse that does need boundaries because it's like biting, being naughty, and doing things I need you to do, it's a little bit different. It's like raising a child. Like, there's a point in which you're going to need to put boundaries, you know, like, I mean, it's in general with people and everything, you know, there's a little bit of balance between being too good, etc. And they're going to have to be treated differently according to what they need. You cannot treat them all the same. So it's kind of, yeah.
Well said.
And Adam, I have a question about the rubber block bits that you guys have, because I've seen a lot of like rubber bits, but you guys have the little blocks. They're actually like rocks of rubber. And Natalia was showing me that there's different, some of them are a little more flexible than others. There's like different grades of the rubber block bits. So can you explain me more about it?
Yeah, that bit actually now is patent pending, which is really honestly special to me because I've now seen that bit, unfortunately, copied way too many times. We spoke about in the beginning your first horse and how I thought he would benefit from a bit like this because
you mentioned
it was between the two. And only when the horse is leaning against your hand or when you use your hand to the V-shaped channels in the block bit. If you notice, the rubber block bits have a V-shaped channel. It is not straight. It's a V shape. And there's a reason for that. Parallel channels are difficult because parallel channels can pinch versus V-shaped channels have a little bit more give. Does that make sense? It's not a straight slot down. It gradually gets narrower towards the apex of the actual indent. So the rubber block bit is well tolerated by horses that have low palate, horses that have paramouth, horses that are sensitive, but also tend to be a little bit strong. So depending on the model, right, we have this single joint. Now we have one with the French link, so in 3 pieces. We have the flexi. We have the morph, which you bend in shape and it stays how you want. And we have the fixed, which is obviously straight and doesn't move. So there's an application for all of them. And a horse that kind of takes you past the distance and has a soft mouth, but you need a little extra help, you know, you can start with something like a single joint, double joint, you know, or the flexi, but you want to be able to use it on other horses or change the shape, make it mula, make it this, make it that. The morph is a great option because it's versatile. And the block, the straight version is really for one that just lays on you, right? But hates a twist. I do make the rubber twist, but that bit, you know, it still has that sharp edge to it, right? It still has, it's constantly on the horses, on the bar of the horse's mouth. The horses don't really love that. They just don't. It's like using your stick when you need it and then putting it away. It's the same kind of like with this bit. The straight models have a tapered design, both do, but more obvious on the straight bits. It's tapered towards the center, so it's good for the horses again with low palate because, or fleshy tongues or big lips, because it kind of we're giving them room and it covers more surface area on the bar of the mouth itself towards the outside. You'll see they're thicker. And that's because I didn't want the blocks to become too sharp. I wanted them to cover more surface area.
Okay, and Adam, how do you do it? Like, okay, like I'd be very frustrated to see all the people trying to like copy my designs. And I'm pretty sure you said it's happened to you before and it's probably going to keep happening. How do you do it? Like, how do you survive through it? I'd be like, you know, I was having the initiative of, for example, my interviews in my podcast here in Mexico, and then people started doing the same thing. And I'm like, I had the idea first, you know, it's like annoying, but you can't be like, I had this first or like I did this first, because it's not like I'm the only one that can do it. So how do you manage that?
I think that you have to remember that people copying you is a great compliment. It means you're doing something right, for starters. And I have to constantly breathe and remind myself that. You can buy fake AJR, it's no problem, but it's not the same mold. I can guarantee you, even if I've made it so difficult to copy my bits that even if you took my bit and tried to make a mold, you'd fail. Because it's the way that I do it, that it would never, you would get pockets, you'd get bubbles, you would never, ever, ever get the density and tensile strength that I put specifically. You're not buying just a bit, you're buying technology. You're buying a sophisticated piece of technology. You're buying something that was thought out from beginning till end, from the density of the material I use, the type of material I use, and where it goes on what part of the mouthpiece. These other ones don't work like that. And then you buy the other one, we'll tell you it does not feel the same. And actually, I want to mention as well, and it's really interesting because I now have Jake Adams Equestrian, and I know that this is a new brand that I don't know if either one of you know about it. So, it is going to be the more basic product. We're going to have the very basic models done right. And why do I mention it? This is not a sales pitch. This is not a promo for my company or Jake Adams. It's because a lot of the times these less expensive bits, they aren't the right size and they're made from the wrong shape, the cheek pieces. I took the basic things and I made them correctly. The shape is going to be very similar to AJR because that's what I wanted. I wanted the basic things done correctly in the right size, in the right shape that no one else has managed to do yet.
For fitting the bits, what's like the first few things that you do? Like, do you go and check the horse's mouth, etc.? Or how do you do the fitting for a bit?
So I don't traditionally go and fit bits for people, nor do I have people that fit bits for me. I think that bit fitting is a business in itself. Do I think it's like a shoe and it has to fit and this and that? I mean, yeah, kind of to an extent, but you have to realize that these horses have been bred the same way over and over and over again. And their mouths are pretty much the same size. If you want to be, give or take a palate, but I'm talking about the size. So that's why I don't really read too much into bit fitting. I mean, obviously, if it looks too small, don't use it. But I don't think you have to start putting a measuring tape. I don't think you need to put a measuring tape in the mouth and start, yeah, you can if you want to be really accurate, but know the difference between 135 millimeters and 140 millimeters is a very small difference. It doesn't change. It's not like life-changing difference. And as far as sizing,
something is too small, then yes, clearly the horse is going to be uncomfortable. And
we're talking about the obvious, right?
Right. So thank you so much to Francesca for joining us today and Adam for answering all the questions. And of course, thank you all for listening. And we would love to know your comments and feedback. And if there's anything you want to know, ask the questions in the comments or send me a DM and we'll get you on board. Thanks for joining us today, everybody.
Yep. Thank you.